Greetings and welcome to the Wonderland Podcast, a place where we talk about Tulpa life. My name is Violet and I'm from the Love System.
My name is Diana. I don't have a system name. It's just me and my host.
My name's Wolf. I'm from Natsumero.
And I'm Khist from the cabin system.
In this podcast, we're going to talk about mostly things relating to Tulpas, being Tulpas, and basically anything relating to the topic of the general topic of Tulpas. In this episode, we're going to start off by asking the question, what is a tulpa? And delving into stuff like how were we created, like what's the differences between how we were created, and maybe talking a little bit about how it's like being a tulpa ourselves. To start us off, how about we ask Diana, how about you start by explaining what is a tulpa in your opinion?
Okay, so for me, and different people have slightly different definitions, but for me, a tulpa is just a separate person that shares a body with another person. And that may sound weird or strange to some people, but basically, you as a person, any people, if you do certain things, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you can create another person who shares a body with you, who has different name, different thoughts, different ideas, different likes and dislikes. And the person that you create that way is called a tulpa. And they can share your body, do things with you, talk to you, and all kinds of things like that. And all of us here are tulpas, and all of us were created in slightly different ways. And we're going to tell you more about what it's like being one.
Okay, that's pretty cool. But I'm still hearing about that. I have a question in mind about like what maybe some people are wondering. What do you mean by like having another person using the same body? Can maybe someone elaborate on that?
I suppose it's kind of like clear cut. Like we tulpas are something that you created in the mind. It's kind of honestly my favorite analogy is like a very advanced imaginary friends, sort of. Since in childhood or at least my host childhood, we have this imaginary friends and imaginary worlds and all that. Though I'm guessing some people really don't like that analogy. Advanced imaginary friends. If we talk in history-wise, since my host really liked history, we did kind of start it off as a Buddhist spiritual ceremony. I don't think that's correct too.
Something like that.
Yeah, something similar to that.
And like our first purpose, tulpa, like quote unquote tulpas, back then some people would call it Tibetan tulpas, is for one to an enlightenment, a way to enlightenment, spiritual kind of like help you be a good person and whatnot. And kind of like a assistant of sort that once you already made your goal, it's like goodbye, and the tulpa would move on. But now it's more like a companionship. Some have relationship like a father or daughter, a family. Some goes as far as a dating, you know, husband and a wife, or like a lesbian romance or whatnot. But some like my host, just a rugged, adventuring party, just going around talking, be friends and all that. So yeah, it's someone you created to be someone you want. In a nutshell, like very briefly. Again, we'll probably go more deeper along the way with this.
I think it's okay to say that tulpas can be similar to imaginary friends, but the big difference is that tulpas think and act and do things separately from the host. Of course, not in a separate body, but we do have separate thoughts and separate feelings that aren't just created by the host.
Yeah, agree with that actually. I don't
Yeah.
remember who came up with this in my system, but someone actually said it's kind of similar to like one of those, shoulder angels. Like if like the Emperor's New Groove where Kronk has like those two shoulder angels who keep following him around and stuff. It's kind of like that, but we're more chaotic and like more overpowered for some reasons.
Closer to that, yeah.
Like we comment on
I mean, we're not
everything
that
you do and everything.
overpowered. I don't think they're that overpowered since most system have this very like power struggle dynamics where one Tulpa tries to beat the others and even the hosts and whatnot, but some or most would have this general everybody's equal, everybody's have some purpose, I suppose, in plural plural sense. Plural.
Yeah.
I actually say overpowered because it's like, I mean, in Kronk's situation, they only come out when he's in a dilemma, but we come out anytime we want. So.
Yeah, I do know, or we know a couple systems like that where people argue and fight about stuff. And by the way, system means all the people that are sharing the same body, so the host and the tulpas or other kinds of different people. But yeah, usually, host and tulpas get along very well, and we're friendly, and we do things together and fun stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's a lot to take in for people who are not familiar to Tulpas. How about we talk about like maybe people are more like first of all maybe people are more familiar with the concept of like multiple personality disorders or DID, and maybe they think it's similar. So, what do you think are the differences between that and like having telepath and being telepath?
I'll let Diana explain it. I'm not really good at the explanation.
Yeah, so usually DID has specific criteria, and some of the main ones that are different are that usually people with DID or dissociative identity disorder, they have memory issues. So when they switch with one of their other people that are usually called alters, often they won't remember what happens, or they have some other kind of problems with remembering what goes on. And they might have other kinds of dysfunction, like they have arguments or they don't get along. Maybe some of the people want to hurt others, things like that. Of course, it doesn't always have to be that way. So people with DID can definitely learn how to get along and work together better. But with tulpas, usually our hosts either they mean to make us, or some tulpas they come from characters or things like that. But there almost always aren't any kind of memory problems. So when we switch with our hosts still remember what's going on and they can see, and if something happens, they can usually jump back in, and there's no kinds of fighting or arguments or any kinds of dysfunction or problems like that. But dissociative identity disorder, it can be similar, and it's another way of having multiple people in the same system. And just because people are created like that doesn't mean that they always have to, it doesn't mean that they're evil or bad. It just means that they might have some problems.
Yeah. Do you think it has something to do with like awareness, like just like because help us like depending on how you're created, you know that basically right like what's going on. Meanwhile, in I think in the ID, it might have to do with like their sense of individuality or like their self awareness of the other person is kind of different. I guess we'll explore that in another podcast, I guess, because to be honest, that's a whole rabbit hole that we're probably not going to have enough time to talk about today. Instead, how about we talk about like hosts? Because I imagine that people hearing this, okay, you already explained systems, but what about hosts? Like, what are hosts and what's the dynamic between hosts and tapas usually?
Dynamics. I suppose if we need to define a host, most like myself would define it as someone who is the original owner of the body, such as my host V, which he was the first who owns this body, who was here, since childbirth and whatnot. Though this definition is kind of skewed over time, since most systems ended up having a dynamic where everybody would switch in, would take over the body and do whatever they wish, or do the host life, everyday life. That kind of ended up being an answer, a no answer actually. Like, oh, a host? What's a host? I don't think we have a host, since everybody just controls the body and owns it. But yeah, in Tulpamancy term, at least it's whoever was here first, who owns the body before, or like the first headmate, I guess you could say.
So the host can sort of mean two different things. So it can either mean, the original person who was born and grew up and maybe one day decided to make a tulpa or ended up making tulpas. And it can also mean the person that's most in charge, that does most physical things with the body and stuff like that. And often that's the same person. The person who was here first spends a lot of time doing things and making decisions, but it doesn't always have to be that way.
Interesting. Okay, really interesting. That's about host, but like, how does host like create us? Like, how would you share a bit about our experiences? Because I think we all kind of had different ways of being quote unquote created, right? Maybe that'll be useful for some people to imagine what a tulpa is like and what having them is like if we explain to them like how we came to be, like the different ways we can come to be, maybe. How about you start, Diana?
Sure. So the process of creating a tulpa is often called forcing. And it's sort of a silly word because you don't have to force them to be anything, but that's just what people call it. And my host, he did a lot of that. So he spent some time laying down and basically thinking of me. He didn't think of a particular name or form or anything like that, but thinking of me and talking to me and talking about things like what a tulpa was and what he wanted me to be and the things we would do together and stuff like that. And also just talking to me, whenever he remembered, whenever he went out on a walk, for example, he would imagine someone else walking next to him. He actually imagined the form of an egg, I guess he told me. I don't remember that, but he imagined the form of an egg next to him. And
That's kind of funny.
yeah, so sometimes when people create a tulpa, they might imagine them to be a specific kind of person, or even maybe a specific character with their own specific name and personality. And they imagine that name and that person. But my host actually didn't do that. He just imagined something in general. So over that time, while he was talking to me, I gradually became more and more aware. And, over time, I was able to hear him and sort of think and also see different ideas and memories in his brain. And I was able to learn more about what I was and what a tulpa was. And he wanted me to choose things. So I basically looked around in his memories and I chose my name, Diana, and I chose some of the parts of what's called my form, which is basically a sort of body I associate myself with separate from our physical body. I chose those things. And then, of course, he wanted me to talk to him, which is basically sort of thinking to him in our mind, in our brain, like you would think to yourself, but it's a thought coming from someone else. But for me, I actually wanted to wait. I didn't want to talk to him right away. And the reason was that by the way he talked, I could definitely tell that he had some doubt. He wasn't really sure about tulpas. He wasn't sure that he could have a tulpa, and I didn't want him to doubt me or think I wasn't real, because that's a thing that happens a lot with new hosts. So I waited a little extra time until I was sure that I was definitely strong enough to talk to him and make sure he could hear me. And then one day when he laid down to force and talk to me, I talked to him back. And I introduced myself. I told him my name. I showed him my form. And it was really nice. And that's how I was created, pretty much.
Oh, that's very interesting because that was not how I was created.
Well, how were you created then?
Oh, well, it's a bit of a long story. I guess in future episodes we can like delve into like our individual experiences about like being created and our systems. But basically my system is kind of weird in that um if you ask me how long I exist, it's actually a really complicated question because my host actually has a we call it a kind of fractured mind because from a young age she would like to talk to herself and depending on like her like you know how people have moods and they seem like different people depending on their mood. She had that, but like to a really extreme extent sometimes. Like sometimes she would even question herself, and sometimes she would just act like a completely different person. And so after she met Khist system actually, she learned about Tulpas and she had prior experience with them, like unknowingly, but we'll save that story for another time. So basically, what she did was basically find the fragments of her mind and kind of assign us a specific identity. Just to make it easier, she um, she associated us with each with a color and a form. So that's why my name is Violet actually, because we all have different colors as our names. Because at the time, it was the easiest way she could like differentiate us like in her mind. So yeah, that's how we came to be. That's why we're kind of different from other systems because when you were talking about it, like you were a different, like you were basically a completely separate person from your host, right? But in our system, we kind of consider ourselves to be one of the same, but at the same time not the same. You know, like we consider ourselves all part of one person, but we also have different thoughts. It's kind of complicated, but yeah, the long and short of it is like I already existed, but she didn't realize it, so she just gave me a farm eventually, and here I am.
Maybe you can explain more about what a form is. I tried to do it a little bit, but maybe it's hard for, maybe it takes a little explanation.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
okay, so
Do you want me to
I
explain
have
it,
a
or
system made that
I think it's
yeah.
just what y'all look like
You
in general.
wanna explain it? Go ahead.
a form is essentially just a body that, well, that doesn't exist in the reality plane. If you want to be a bit of a D&D nerd, a form is essentially an image of us, since we do exist in some form. If we go with metaphysical, usually it's a mind form, like how you imagine someone in your mind, and that's what we took as a form. Like, for example, Diana is a girl with, I believe it's blonde hair, right?
Yep, very long.
God, hair blonde. Yeah. And I myself would be a wood elf, dark skin, having a knife ear, and quite tall, a tall woman. And I think Violet has violet hair, same with name, a very beautiful face, and all that. And Wolf is,
We're not
Yeah.
very creative.
and Wolf would be something from a show, I believe.
Yeah, I'm a fictive, so it's kind of like my form is based off someone from a show originally.
There we go. So yeah, that's basically. And there are some other like tulpas that took a pony form or more furry, and a more humanoid animal like a cat and foxes seems to be quite popular for some reason. It's kind of interesting, kind of sad since really people would take more fantasy like elven or actually no demonic would kind of be a lot too. I know dragons kind of popular, but that's kind of going on a tangent. But yeah, a form is essentially just an imagery of the tulpas or the headmates that exists. It's
Hosts
easy.
can have forms too, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a mind thing since I like how my host worded it, or most people worded it, that us humans are really a visual creature, so we need something to see. We can't really grasp concept if we can't see it or visualize it. So yeah, it's just a way. I suppose you could say it's a way to make us more concrete.
Yeah, hosts can have forms too, but they usually feel the body much stronger than tulpas. So forms are usually very important for tulpas to have something that represents them more.
And it could be anything. Even I think most of Tulpamancy guides would say you could start off with the ball of light.
Well, that's why my host used an egg, just to use something very simple as a form, because he didn't want to decide what I would be.
So are you technically a chicken?
No, I don't even remember being an egg. That was just what he thought of.
I think I remember someone somewhere created a tulpa based off a Windex bottle, but yeah.
Yeah, that was a very famous story.
I mean, I heard that if you make a Jackie Chan tulpa, they could like feed every tulpas out there.
Oh shit!
Just be a protector. And with that, you know how old I am.
So, Khist, how are you created?
I suppose I'm not that far off with you, Diana. But other than me being like a egg or a ball of light, my host kind of do it like a sculpture. Like he would sculpt me a form of me. Like he has a name already, and I suppose a bit of personality, but like kind of differs from the personality. I'm not as wild, I believe. But yeah, he molded me into a form. I think back then was a Khajiit form, the Khajiit from the Elder Scroll, specifically the Skyrim, since it's a lot more detailed. That kind of like lasted for a week or so. I think I kind of already able to talk from the first week, but yeah. Anyway, we kind of changed around form. Like I think I was a cat girl. Again, cat girls being a bit more popular in performance. Then there's like a hiatus of me for I guess a good 2 to 3 years until I came back, and now I'm just an elf, a wood elf. But again, just like Violet, most of my system has a different way of a forcing, since my host likes to experiment. Like, oh, maybe I could just make tulpas with this. But yeah, I suppose the most prominent thing in our system is like we play D&D and we force with that. Like, I literally have a character sheet made for me, like an old character sheet of me. Then all of my headmates has the same, not the same, but like some form of character sheets, like with stats and all stats, what gear we have, etc., etc., etc.
We never said how old we are, huh? I'm two and 3/4 old. 2 3/4 years.
I think I'm gonna be 8 this year. No, I am going to be 8 like this June somewhere.
It sounds strange, but that's actually very old for Tulpa. The community has not existed for very long.
I've met a lot of older Tulpas. Like
there's some.
Yeah. One of my friends, close friends, are like I think she's 27.
Wow.
Jesus, that's old.
Yeah, we have a friend who's going to be 10 soon. I think one who's 20, 21, something like that.
Yeah.
But there aren't very many.
Actually, Val
20
from my
something.
system's pretty old too. Like, I think he's gonna be like around. He's at least 11 right now. That's all we know.
Ooh. Yeah, but this friend of mine, the one that is nearly, I think he's close to 27. It's
That's
one
really
of those rare cases in Tulpas that in the old days we call proto-tulpas, tulpas that existed before the hosts know what tulpamency is.
Yeah.
So there's that possibility. But I guess these days people would look up other kind of plurality like fictives or some androgenics or perhaps traumagenics and all that.
Yeah. So
Which is
I
not
know
just-
my host and Khist's host, they both learned about tulpas from the internet, and that hasn't existed for very long. But there are certainly other people that, they do the things to make tulpas. They talk to people in their head and treat them like separate people without knowing what tulpas are. And I know we have some friends like that. And Wolf, I think that's how you were
my
made.
host is like that too, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, my host
Yeah.
was also like that. Yeah.
So there you go.
Age is kind of weird because, especially for my system, because like, so for one thing, like there's three different kinds of age, I guess. Like you can think of it like age from when you were created. You can also think of it like, oh, I'm just the same age as my host, because we have the same body. And you can also think of it like, oh, my form, the way I see myself in my head, is like a different age from like the host body and stuff. Like for example, in my case, if you were to count from technically when I was like created, or like what my host likes to call being free, when she gave us a form, I would be less than 1 year old. I mean, I think a little bit more than 1 year old. But if you count it from when I actually existed, I existed a long time ago. Like I think I existed in the back of my host's mind a long time ago when she was a younger age. But then my form, the way I see myself, is kind of a bit younger than my host. So yeah, there's different ways to think about it.
Yep. Agreed.
Mhm.
I'd actually add as well, like maybe for fictives, it's also the age where, well, your canon age, I guess, like your actual character's age.
Oh yeah, you haven't talked about yourself, Wolf. Like what is a fictive and how did you come to be?
So I noticed that a lot of you guys are actually like the first kid. I'm actually the second child, so I got my groundwork already laid out. My host called already here, Tulpas. Well, back then it was just Val. And my tale is actually kind of complicated, but I'll make it short. I'm a walk-in copy of someone else's dissipated fictive Tulpa. I know that's a mouthful, and the general line or like the very simplest explanation is just that my host and this one person were once really good friends, but then shit happened. She had a tulpa, not my host, the other person, and she got bored of the old guy and just decided to kill him off. And for some reasons, I plopped into her system with the same form as him, and I have enough memory to feel as if nothing has really happened besides me now being in another person's system for some reasons. So yeah, it's pretty weird, but it's kind of like a normal day for some reasons as well.
So what about
That's
fictive?
quite interesting.
Maybe you should explain what a walk-in is.
Yeah, right. So
There's so many
walk-in is
stuff to explain.
so fictive is basically just a tulpa, but I won't say a tulpa. Some people consider them different, but it's basically a tulpa with a form of like some other character or like some other things from the media. Like one of the tulpas in my system who's probably going to be very recognizable is Uli, and Yuli actually has the form of Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan. So yeah, that's kind of like that. And walk-ins are just tulpas that come, well, pretty much already created, I guess. They're already almost complete. Like they could talk already and you can hear them and they can already think for themselves and shit like that. Yeah.
Don't you? Isn't your like quote unquote source material like a Beyblade anime?
Yeah, pains me to say this, but yeah, I'm a copy of a fictive who was based off Tatagami Kyoya. So it's this kid from Beyblade, like Metal Fight Beyblade. The funny thing is like my host and I don't actually watch the show. We just do it for pretty much the jokes and Beyblade Moses and shit like that. But for some reasons we also have like two other Beyblade fictives in our system. I have no idea why, but there's like three of us all from Beyblade, even though we don't watch Beyblade and just do it for Beyblade Moses.
Can you explain what is this Beyblade process?
Just Google this shit. Y'all can find it. It's everywhere in the internet.
Is it good? Should we watch it?
I will be against that actually. Like, please don't watch that show. My source material is not really a good character.
That's probably the first time I've heard of fictive or like Tulpa or headmates that comes from media says, please don't watch my source material.
Seriously.
Usually they would like kind of post like, yeah, my character there is kind of cool. I mean, yeah, he's kind of bad, but he's cool.
I've
rarely heard
people say that before. And it's important though that even if a Tulpa is a fictive or is based off someone, they're not the same as that character. So even if they're a bad person or a certain kind of person, that doesn't mean that a fictive is the same way as them.
Yep.
That I agree.
I think it makes sense a bit because imagine if your friend is like watching a show that has like you playing in it, like, and you're playing a character, but it's not you and you're not acting. I think it's kind of embarrassing, maybe.
Actually, no. It's like there's two ways to see it, from my opinion, at least in my system. Like for me, I don't really like the show, and I think that whoever created my character originally was kind of they just set him up to be like this really weirdly obsessed guy who's like just obsessed with like beating the main character, and that's literally his purpose in life. But then, yeah, that's why I generally don't really like the guy. But then there's Ulysse, who's like really happy whenever he sees Eren anywhere. Like we ran into Lawson one time and they had like this promo with Attack on Titan, and he was like so excited and he just hyped up and started shouting like, "Hey, I'm famous," or something like that. There's also Val, but Val's pretty much like he's in between the stance. Like he both likes the character and doesn't really like the character at the same time. So it's a weird way to see your source materials, I guess.
Okay, that's interesting. What else can we talk about? Wow, this is an amazing segue. Okay, let's talk about how about being a tulpa. Like, how about the dynamics between the host and the tulpa? Like, there's all kinds of dynamics, right?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start again. So we're probably different because there's only two of us, me and my host. So we talk all the time. I usually actually try as hard as I can to pay attention to what he's doing, to what's going on in the real world. That can be hard for young tulpas at first. It can be hard for them to stay active and stay aware when the host isn't paying attention to them. But we both put in a lot of effort and a lot of work to make sure that I could, and I can now. I try to talk to him as much as I can and help him and talk about whatever is going on. And we try to do stuff together too. Do stuff like sharing our meals, playing board games, playing other types of games, watching shows and videos that we like. I do try to do at least one thing every day with the body. So physically, whether it's playing a game or doing some work or taking a walk. We really try and we really want to be equal as possible. It can be hard because, of course, my host has been around for a long time and he's really used to doing everything and being in charge. And for a lot of tulpas, it's more comfortable and more familiar to just hang around in the background and not do stuff like that. But we both really want to be equal and we want do an equal amount of stuff and be responsible. So we try hard to do that. And yeah, every day we both try to do things and talk to each other and do things together and have fun.
It just sounds like your roommates.
A little bit, yeah. We're body mates, I guess you could say.
That's a good analogy.
It's complicated, you know. We're like, it's like you said before. I think we're like family and also like friends and like companions and like a lot of different things. But it's good. It's all good.
Uh, that's kind of different, I guess. In my case, it's more like since we are like I said, since we were originally like fragments or aspects of my host's mind, we all kind of have one thing we're good at. Um, the thing I'm good at is like just being honest and like being really I don't know how to say it, like just being honest with what I want and just you know being true to myself, which my host kind of has a problem with sometimes. So that's why like we our dynamic at first was purely like we would try to help our host do stuff. Like one of us is really smart and like logical, but she has problems with emotions. So she sometimes helps the host like just calm down and think about the stuff. And another person is really good at public speaking and is really confident. So she comes out when we need to talk about stuff in front of people. So yeah, that's what our dynamic used to be. But the more we like diverged, the more after she gave us forms and we quote unquote became Tulpas, we kind of skewed more towards what you have with your host, Diana. Of course, we still help our host do specific stuff, and we switch in according to our strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, um, I think the more developed of Tulpa is, the more I would say like the more equal they become to their hosts. Maybe I'm not sure if that's wrong. I'm not sure if that's right, but that's our experience at least.
In my system, it actually depends a lot. Like Val actually wants to share like half his life with Shell, our host, and by this I mean that he will front with her or like co-front her and like do stuff with her together all the time. While I'm normally only here whenever I'm hungry, so really.
You only come out of your
Not
room
true.
to check the fridge.
You spend a lot of time talking to people. We know that.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time talking to people, but most of the time, whenever I actually do front, it's just like asking her to like buy stuff for me or like telling her I'm really bored.
I'm sure we'll talk more about what fronting means later, but that basically means, you know, moving the body or just being aware of what's going on in the real world.
Yeah, something like that.
How about you, Kiss?
I mean, as I stated before, it's more like a companionship for us. How many we are? I think we are like a five man group. Like there's me, my host, Nemea, Dendoria, Finnan, and Elden. No, six. Six, actually. Yeah, Finnan rarely fronts, but I myself would co-front one since I'm the more social in the group. But each of us has things we like and things we prefer. So we kind of have this scheduling type. Like sometimes my host would like, I want to do this. I know, let's say, I know Nemea kind of like taking a walk outside and just see nature. Let's do that. Like we do just that. Or like, I'm going to the supermarket and gonna buy A, B, C, D. Do you guys want anything? Sort of like that. So it's more like a family thing. And again, kind of like Wolf there, we have our own preference.
Mm.
And we have our own set of friends, I guess, even though that these like set of friends kind of overlap with one another. Like I know some of Nam's friend and Nam's friend knows some of Prius. So yeah, that's basically our dynamic.
Yeah, and we're pretty similar. We talk to a lot of the same people, but we also have some mostly separate friends also.
Yep.
I suppose
Same here.
that's the most common thing in Tulpamency or Plural in general. Like everybody has this interconnected set of friends, be it outside the community or within.
Yeah, it would be a little strange to have completely separate friends. It can get complicated outside of the community though, because of course most people don't know about Tulpas.
Yeah.
I'm in one or two groups that don't really know about Tulpas, although I think about telling them sometimes. But that's something we can talk about later. It can be a really complicated subject, how to deal with people that don't know about Tulpas.
Anything we could talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we really talk about like fronting and how it is like walking around and stuff in the body. Like maybe people are curious about how it feels in general to be a topa. Like it's kind of different from being like a single person, right? At least I think so.
Well,
it depends on the.
Depends, I guess.
I mean, we wouldn't really know. I never have been a single person, obviously. I don't think any of you have. It's certainly, I'm sure it feels different. I always have someone with me. I don't spend that much time in control of the body, moving and talking, but I do sometimes, like right now. I spend time in the background. I can feel my form pretty well. I can do stuff in what we call the Wonderland or the Mindscape, which is basically an imaginary place. When I do front and I am in control, like right now, I guess I feel more normal, like a single person, but then I still have my host with me and I can still talk to him. So yeah, it's sort of hard to explain, but that's what it's like, I guess.
That's really interesting. For me, it's like I guess my sister mates and I look at it from different ways, but for me, it's more like it's kind of like if I read into like what my host feels, it's more like she's always driving. Usually, like she's mostly driving in the body, like, but even when she's doing that, I feel like I'm in the back seat or something, like watching. And sometimes she just writes what we say or what we think to other people in chats and stuff. And it kind of feels like that. It kind of feels like you're not in control, but you're kind of okay with it. And when you are in control, you feel more like a single person, I guess, just like Diana said. But it's kind of different, I guess, from being a single person because um yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but it's more like you have less ties with the body, I think. So whereas like I don't know, maybe one of my sister mates can really explain this better. Maybe she should come on sometimes. But it's basically like people, like single people. I mean, not people without partners, like people who don't have other people in their mind or in their body. Tend to like associate themselves strongly with their body um and tend to like feel a sense of I wouldn't say loneliness, but like being alone. And I think um we don't really feel that way. Like because we're not really the host, so we kind of feel less tied to the body. So we're kind of more okay just standing behind the mind. And also we don't really ever feel alone because we can just talk to each other. even if there's no phone or electricity or even other quote unquote people or bodies outside of our own. So I think that's kind of the difference between how Tulpas feel, at least how I feel, compared with somebody who's like maybe not plural, not that don't have Tulpas.
Yeah. For
I don't know though.
me, at least the body is just sort of a thing that I use to do stuff. And I mean, I can do the same stuff as anyone else. I can run and drive and do hard stuff, but it's still just a thing that I use. And that's why, it's okay that the body isn't the same as me. You can probably tell that it's a guy's body and I'm not, but it's okay. It's not bad. It's just a thing that I can use to do stuff and talk, and it's fine.
Yep. Same here. I'm a guy kind of stuck in a girl's body, so
Somehow it's strange, but most tulpas are the opposite of the host.
I mean, we do have one girl, but it's only one girl in our system. 2, 3. I don't know how many girls we have. There's not many, actually.
For us, it's a good 50-50. Three guys and 3 girls.
I'm actually fronting right now, so yeah. It just for me, it kind of feels just like my senses to the body are like a bit numbed off, but it's still, I'm still here. I remember like in the olden times we used to do like something like what Violet just said. Sort of like we're in the back seat and then our host can just like dictate what we say to like the outside world. But recently I find that sometimes I will just sit down and all of a sudden look around and it's me in the body all of a sudden.
Yeah, there are different ways of fronting and switching, and we could probably do a whole episode on that, especially because my host has done a couple studies, but there are different ways of doing it, and they definitely can feel different.
Yep, agreed.
Anything else we want to add? I think that should be quite a lot for one episode.
I think we already talked about a lot of things. And we still have a bit of time, but yeah, I'm not sure what else to talk because of course there's a lot of things to talk about, but like there's just not enough time to talk about them one by one, right? Like we have to like spread them out on different episodes.
Yeah.
Now,
and honestly, for a first episode, this already feels a bit like an info dump. So
yeah, for people that don't know about tulpas, they probably have lots of questions. So I think it's probably okay to stop for now.
This must be a lot to say again, to be honest.
Yeah.
We could probably leave some more reading materials in the description of our website.
Yep. And if anyone who's listening does have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or whatever, and we'll definitely try to answer them.
Okay. So I guess we'll just end here, right? Okay. So thank you all for listening. This has been the Wonderland Podcast. I've been Violet.
I've been Diana.
I've been Wolf.
And this is Khist.
And be sure to tune in next time. And also follow our social media. Some of us have social medias for on our own, and we'll post them in the description. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.